from PRX.
Hey, everybody. Scooter almost started out with saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary. All our forest friends and swamp people in the swamp-based beings, SBBs. It's time for Sleep With Me. The podcast that puts you, is in its conductor voice to put you to sleep. Let's get on with the show. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots here. This is all intro episode. We put these out kind of on holidays and long weekends. It's intro after intro after intro. Tends to be one of the most popular things we do. So popular that there's a podcast on Sleep With Me Plus for boar friends and boar besties that gets 2 to 3 all intro episodes every single month. Because there's some people that's like almost all they listen to. So if you really love all intros, check that out at Sleep With Me Plus. But I think you'll find this this is fun. It captures the silliness of the show, and it slowly eases you into bedtime. And thanks so much for listening, by the way. I could not make this show without all of you, and I'm so glad to do it because my sleep's been up and down lately. So glad to be able to help you out in the deep, dark night. And take it away, past Scoots. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots here, and I'm getting this messaging out. We've changed up some of the structure of the show. We're looking at other changes. So if Sleep With Me is an essential part of your bedtime, an important part of your bedtime, it does something unique for you. When you found the show, you said, wow, this isn't like anything else. This is what I was looking for. That it's not, if Sleep With Me is something, you could walk away from the podcast tomorrow. You could replace it tomorrow. If we stop making it, you wouldn't blink an eye. Don't worry about this message. I'm not kidding either. But if you would blink an eye, or it would impact you, please let me know what is essential about Sleep With Me for you. And the best way to do that, obviously, is to support the show directly. I'll send you a video when you sign up, and you can reply to that video and let me know, hey, these are the essential things I find about Sleep With Me. Because I don't want to assume as we're looking at it, and to be honest, like if enough people think the show's essential, we don't even have to worry about making any more changes. It's just, we got enough listeners. So if it's essential to you, it's essential you take action. But if you can't afford to support the show, let me know what's essential to you. Use our contact form on our website. Send me a message. Or sign up for a free trial with Sleep With Me Plus and let me know whatever works best for you. But yeah, that's what we're looking to do right now. Oh, Mystery Bard. A lot of people help out in the show. Who are they?
Chris Posty Poster Son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the Legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley, Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Runner. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the Mystery Bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at JonathanMann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your moderators. Get support dear Scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. Couldn't do it without all you, everybody that works on this podcast. And don't forget to support the Trevor Project. The Orlando Park SOP fundraiser is what we're a part of. They have amazing art up, but you can also support the Trevor Project directly. Use the links in our show notes. And thank you so much for being a listener. What do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts, running through, things you're thinking about on your mind, about the past or the present or the future, feelings. So those could be emotions coming up or physical sensations, changes in time or temperature or routine. So any of those things, you say, well, this has been a change in my routine here. Okay, well, yeah, let me see if I could help with that. Or whatever it is, whatever's keeping you awake, I'd like to help. And the way I'm going to help is I'm going to try to take your mind off that and keep you company while you fall asleep. And the way I'm going to try to do that is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I try to create a safe place. I kind of said that, but I always like to emphasize that comfortable, roomy, or cozy. We have it all. We're the placiest of the safe places. I don't know if you've, because right now when I'm recording this, of course I'll talk about it in a minute if I remember. Hold on, I'm going to grab a pen and write it on my hand. Okay, so you didn't hear that pause or when I had to redo this take because I dropped a pen, but, so I'll try to come back to it because new listeners I want to get to. So I'm going to try to create a safe place. I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing. Eventually they'll be soothing for some, if you're new. Soothing, creaky, dulcet tones. So creaky are my dulcet tones. And I live in California, so right now they're extra creaky. They are. So if you're new, I'm glad you're here. I do want to give you a bunch of information because this podcast is a lot different than what so-called normal podcasts. And naturally that could throw people off, and I totally understand that. So let me give you some information so you have it. First thing to know is this podcast is not for everybody. But even for the people that listen on a regular basis, which is a significant amount of people, it took 2 or 3 tries or 5 tries. But I would say 2 or 3 tries is an honest effort to see if this podcast is going to work for you. And you might say, you want me to do honest effort to listen to your podcast? I say, no, not so much. Like I do desire my podcast to help you fall asleep. So that's my motivation is, to give it 2 or 3 tries, and I would only say, it takes I'm with you because all this sleep stuff, it takes a lot of work. And you say, why does it have to take so much work for me to get a good night's sleep? I've been asking myself that my whole life. Yeah, much stronger words than that, and it really isn't fair. I totally so. I'd say, well, given this podcast 2 or 3 tries is worth a shot at this point because if you've tried even half the stuff I've tried, you've probably spent a bunch of money and invested a lot of time in mostly emotion because you say, well, I hope this one works. Or at least for me, I got those brain bots and I say, well, I'm going to try this new routine. And they say, well, why? I thought you were trying, you know what I mean? It's not easy being one of us. So whether this podcast works for you or not, I hope you get a good night's sleep. But give this a few tries. I guess my main thing is to say if you're skeptical or doubtful, that totally makes sense. So like we just talked about, we've seen a lot of sleepless people. So that's one thing. Give it a few tries if you're skeptical or doubtful or you feel like this is like you're making a face while you listen to this at first. That's totally normal because this is different. And also to go along with that, this is really not a podcast or even a sleep podcast or sleep audio that you listen to. Like this one is one podcast that's halfway in between being something that you listen to put you to sleep or that you don't listen to that's background noise. We're right in between those things, and it could be either way. You could totally make me background noise, or you could kind of pay attention, but you just kind of barely pay attention if you're new. until you kind of develop a way that you like to listen, and then maybe that'll even change. So just barely listen to me. And if you're new and you try to figure out the podcast, you're waiting for it to be like the other stuff, it just doesn't, we don't ever get there. So that's that. Oh, and this isn't really a podcast that puts you to sleep. I guess that kind of goes along with it. It's more a podcast that keeps you company and takes your mind off of stuff, barely engages you while you fall asleep. So there's those things that are important to know. Then the other thing that can throw new people off is the structure of the show. And the structure of the show kind of goes like this. It goes, greeting, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary, and all our I don't know if I said it, but our swamp-based beings, because this is our friends, our forest friends. So there's a greeting, so you know you're welcome. Then there's business, and the business keeps the show going, coming out twice a week instead of being a paywalled thing. So there's business. Then there's an intro. The intro is around 12 to 20 minutes long. And I guess I kind of find it, it just doesn't work for everybody, that idea. At least at first, especially, I mean, there's nothing I get more, other than my voice and my personality. The other thing I get the most strongly worded emails about is the intro and the business. Because for someone that's feeling strongly about it, it just is one thing. And they say, what is this 20 minutes of this stuff? So let me at least try to meet you where you are, if you're even close to feeling that way, which is legitimate and understandable. So the intro is an organic thing. It's kind of a show within a show is the easiest way to say it. But for regular listeners, it's part of their bedtime routine or their wind down routine. So you could experiment. You could start it before you get into bed, or you could start it when you get into bed. You could also start it and start to do some other mellowing out thing. Whether it's drawing or, maybe you just play with Legos for 15 minutes. I don't know. I'd like that. Hey, Legos, how come you're not pitching that to adults and maybe even kids? Like, play with Legos for 15 minutes. Legos are pretty chill. Or Lego competitor, Playmobil, you don't have my number, but, I'm definitely down. You say, well, we're changing, or some other, action figures. They're not just for action anymore. Dolls. They're not, they're not just for imaginary playing. They're for chilling out. It's true. I mean, you're not in your head. I could tell. But so just kind of the idea of the intro is to give you some distance between the day and bed, to ease you into bedtime. Now, there are a percentage of listeners, 2% of regular listeners for our free feed, and then a percentage of patrons that just consume the stories. So for the free feed, your best bet is just to go to 20 minutes or 22 minutes and start playing it there. But I would only do that after you get used to the podcast, because otherwise it's going to be even more strange. So, okay, so that's the intro. Then there's business. That's how the podcast business works, is a mid-roll, they call it. So that's where a lot of our business is, between the intro and the episode. And that's kind of, again, just important to bring you the show. Then there's our story, which is episodically modular series. You can listen to it in any order. Just a bedtime story, we'll say. It's called Otter Things. It's about otters and other beings in the swamp. Then there's thank yous at the end of the show. So that's the structure of the show. So that's the next thing to know. Then the other thing you want to know is that I make the show because I've been there. Tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. So I know how it feels, and I just want something a little bit nice and a little bit relieving for you. To just give you some comfort and to take your mind off stuff, to help. So I hope I can provide that. And the reason I want to help is, one, because I've been there, but two, because you deserve a good night's sleep. You deserve a place where you can rest, feel comfortable, and have some distance between the day and you so that tomorrow you're rested and you can live your life. That's like I said, it's not fair. It's not enjoyable. And really, one of my other goals is to just make bedtime something you don't have to dread. Even if you can't, even if we can't get to the point where you look forward to it, you say, well, it's not as bad with Scoots. Yeah, that's what I hope the regular listeners, well, I got Scoots there, so at least I got something. I got my cats. I got my I don't put my Legos in bed, obviously. I got my former action figures. Now I call them chill figures, play figures, and my dolls, which I still call dolls. But yeah, like I can't patent that title, chill figures, but if you do have whatever, I don't know what companies are still making those kind of toys, but get in touch with me. Hasbro, do you even exist anymore? Like, because if you do, I'm pretty sure that's who used to make action figures. Or we'd have to get this word because I think somebody probably owns this, whoever owns the rights to Superbad, but we could call them chillaxin figures. That's just automatic. That almost works. So whatever I wrote on my hand, I won't even talk about anymore because we don't need to. Now that we've stumbled on chillaxin figures, you say, tell me more about your vision for chillaxin figures. And I'd say, well, thanks. I'm glad I have the great toy conglomerates here all together in one room. So you all just have one chance, to shower me with your toy billions. But, we're not taking any toy money, by the way. Oh, could you pay me in Star Wars? No, please don't bring that up because please don't try to tempt me with toy-based bonuses because they won't be accepted because they would work, but I can't take any toy-based bonuses. It'd be great if you just accidentally left some toys somewhere, but it wouldn't impact my decision-making at all. Like if a giant container of chillaxin figures showed up somewhere, but also I have nowhere to put it. I live in an apartment. So, thanks for all of you coming. Yeah. So there's a vision of the chillaxin figure. Now I know this is, outside of the toy box, or whatever you call that, the plastic, whatever the heck it's called. I'm not trying to say you have limited vision, but when I pitch chillaxin figures to my toys, some of my toys said, so it's just like an action figure or a doll like lying in a beach chair. I said, no. That's an action figure chillaxin. That's something totally different than a chillaxin figure. An action figure chillaxing. Just to do a basic grammar lesson, if I can, the action figure is the noun and the chillaxin's the verb. A chillaxin figure is a proper noun, or one day will be. And it's a figure or a toy-based figure, a figure-based toy that you use when you're chillaxing, which is a mild action. Kind of just like Superbad, but this is more nothing like just because that word was so great. Okay, so I can't get that idea though of a toy just sitting on well, it's pretty relaxing. That's a relaxing use of a toy. Having a toy on a beach chair, but how long is that going to be relaxing for? Chillaxing figure it's just basically playing with the toys while you're relaxing. It's just it's just branding. Come on, this might not be branding 101, but I don't think it's at 201. Maybe. So just relaxing. It's just a new way to play with toys. And I think it also offers an opportunity to accessorize because you could have because you don't want most of these toys you don't want to have in bed with you because I know most of your toys are plastic based and they're a bit hard. And this doesn't mean, oh, no, so we should have soft toys. No. Plush toy. There's toys, there's stuffed animals and stuff, plush. That's what you have in bed with you. I see your hand in the back. What are you, from one of the plush makers? Why don't you just play with your plush toys in bed and call those chillaxing figures? I don't want to pull rank here, but I'm the expert. I'll tell you exactly why. I got an answer for this. I'm glad we're having this press conference in the middle of a sleep podcast intro and business pitch, but I'll just answer this last question before you can figure out who's going to, win. It's emotion, right? Basically, to talk about why can't you just chillax with your stuffed animals? Your relationship with your stuffed animals or your plush is different than with your chillaxing or formally action figures or toys, your daytime toys. You have an emotional resonance with a plush that is more for comforting, for snuggling, and for sleeping. Now, there is some play. I'm sure there's some playtime with them, and that's good. But contextually, it's a totally different level of playing. Just to take you back to Scooter's beginning of his intro, a plush or a stuffed animal bed-based plush. Now, this is just bed-based plush, right? That's when you're fully in bed and disengaged. And an action figure, a Lego, a doll, or other things is for daytime playing. A chillaxing figure is the bridge between these two worlds. Those are three different emotional resonances, you understand? And the best part is, I'll be creating it. None of you, you'll just be paying me for it and waiting for me to return your calls and get stuff done, which will be a while. Say, Scoots, how's that proposal of the I say, well, it's coming along. I say, send to voicemail. Is that Hasbro HQ calling? This is said to voicemail. So anyway, if you're new, I'm glad you're here. I really hope this podcast can help you get some rest. Give it a few tries. I work really hard. I yearn and I strive. And I really want to help you fall asleep. Thanks again for coming by. And here's a couple of ways we're able to bring this podcast to you twice a week. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots here, and this message is only for people who consider Sleep With Me an essential part of your bedtime routine. And when I say essential, I mean, if you think you could, if we stop making Sleep With Me tomorrow and you could move on to something else or easily replace the show, then it's not essential to you. But if we had to change the way we made the show or put it out or whatever, and it would impact you, maybe that means Sleep With Me is essential to you. And if it is, I'd love to hear what parts of Sleep With Me are essential to you. What is it that makes a show an essential part of your bedtime, or, not a totally essential part of your bedtime, but an important part of your bedtime. And the best way to do that is, because this message is it's essential for people to support the show back for the work that goes into the show. So if you're saying, yes, Sleep With Me is essential, yes, it's an essential part of my bedtime, and these are the reasons. The best way to get that statement to me the fastest is to sign up for Sleep With Me Plus to support the show directly, get the amazing bonus content, all the podcasts we have over there. But I'm also going to send you a video and reply to that video and let me know, hey, these are the essential things to Sleep With Me. And that's a way to underline it. sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. You support the show directly. It's an essential part of your bedtime, and you can let me know. And I've heard from a lot of people who aren't in a position to support the show. It'd be great if you sign up for the referral program, but reach out to me. Use the contact form on our website. Let me know what's essential to the podcast for you, too. You're as important as the people that support the show directly. And it was about a year ago, I heard from so many people who the podcast is essential to who can't support the show directly. And it really helped me kind of make the changes we needed to make last year. And this will really help me see what we're going to do for the rest of this year and next year. So sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, set an alarm, set a reminder, whatever you need to do if the show's essential to you. And then let me know about it. Thanks so much. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. It could be thoughts, things on your mind you're thinking about, feelings, anything coming up for you feeling-wise, emotionally, physical sensations, changes in time or temperature or routine. It could be something else, whatever it is. It could be any number of things. Whatever it is, I'm here to help. And what I'm going to do is try to create a safe place. I've probably said this. I guess I'm trying to speak, but I'm trying to establish a safe place. I know I've said pop-up before. I guess this would be a bit like a pop-up, a safe place where you'd say, I'm establishing it here, but I can transfer it or send it to you. No problem. No assembly required. And the way I do it, way I send it is I send my voice across the deep dark night. I use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents. So you say creaky, dulcet tones. What is that? I say, well, that's how my voice sounds. A bit like something you don't normally hear. You say, well, it's like a big, it's kind of good and it's kind of it's kind of creaky. And you say, okay. For a sleep podcast, you say, okay, yeah, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders. What are those? Well, he never gets to the point, the person that makes the podcast. Or as he's trying to make a point, he goes off on a pointless meander or a superfluous tangent. So those are some of the techniques I use as I try to establish this safe place. Now, if you're new, a few things you should know. Well, did I forget? What I'm going to try to do is create a safe place where you could set aside. Set my voice. No, I think I got everything of the regular intro. Regular listeners, welcome back. As usual, I'm mixed up. But what what I'm going to do if you're new, let me tell you a couple of things, because one, and I've heard this hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times, this podcast does not work for everybody. But it also, for the people it works for, it takes 2 or 3 tries. So I just want you to know that up front. And the reason I explain it is every episode, is to, one, meet your doubt or your skepticism or your uncomfortableness where you are and say, well, that's legitimate to be doubtful or skeptical. Or like say, I don't know about this sleep podcast and your creaky dulcet tones. That's a totally legitimate way to feel. And the only thing I can tell you is just see how it goes, but see how it goes a few tries. Because usually on the first try, this podcast, somehow it has to make even less sense before it makes no sense at all. And I'll explain that more, but give it a few tries if you can. But also know it just doesn't work for everybody, but that's why it's free too. You say, okay, I tried it a few times, it didn't work. But in the end, the people that I work for, they say around 2 or 3 tries, they say, holy moly, I just woke up. So give it a few tries. That's one thing to know. The second thing to know is as you try it out, kind of try it loosely, like a robe. There are robes that are tight-fitting and form-fitting robes, and I've talked about robes on the show before. I think one time this has been a while, but I imagined that Obi-Wan Kenobi and maybe Jean-Luc Picard went to a colony where clothing's optional. Oh, no, it's Doc Brown, I guess, from, what's that, Back to the Future. And he said, well, we're robes, we're going, we don't need any robes. So you wouldn't have any, but so you wear a robe or loosely wear a garment. That's actually like I think that's in a parable. And this podcast is best barely worn. You say, well, it's more draped over my shoulder, like when I'm cooking or something, and I need an extra cooking thingamajig, a towel. And you say, okay, so most podcasts are like an outfit. You're saying, Scoots. Well, some podcasts are, or some podcasts you wear for pleasure. Some podcasts you wear for laughs. Some podcasts are functional. I mean, it's definitely podcasts that are super stylish. So, yeah, and this podcast is more like a like something like over the shoulder. Yeah, like a kitchen towel or a rag you throw over your shoulder. That's what sleep with me is. And you say, could you complete that metaphor? And I say, I don't know. I might try later. But I was trying to explain to the new listener to just kind of do that. Like say, okay, I'm barely listening. This is the one podcast as compared to the outfit-based podcasts or the outfit analogy. You barely listen to this podcast. You only kind of listen. You say, uh-huh. Oh, I forgot I had a kitchen towel over my shoulder. How did I end up at what is it? What is this? A Michelin 5-star restaurant? Like, oh, there's only 4 stars? Oh, I don't know. Oh, it's a dream. Great. So that's one thing. Barely listen to this show. The other thing is this podcast really isn't here to put you to sleep. It's here to keep you company as you fall asleep or to keep you company if you can't sleep. I'm here. I'm your bore friend. I'm your bore bud. I'm your bore bae. I'm your, ideally, one day I'll be your bore bestie. So I'm here to take your mind off of stuff as you drift off and just be at your bedside telling you a story you don't need to listen to. Now, if you can't sleep, I'll be here to the end, or if you wake up. So it's kind of like I'm telling you the story whether you're awake or asleep. But I make this show just as much for the people that can't sleep as the people that are sound asleep already right now. And the nice thing is the episodes are an hour, so you have plenty of time to get comfortable and drift off. And that leads into the kind of next thing that can throw new listeners off, which is the structure of the show. Show starts off with a greeting because I want everybody to know they're welcome and they're important here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and friends beyond the binary. And then there's business. That's how we bring you the podcast twice a week. There's a few minutes of business there. Then there's an intro. And the intro is pretty long, 12 to 18 minutes or so. And it's me introducing the podcast as I'm doing right now. And for the new listener, you could say, you're going to introduce the podcast for 12 to 18 minutes. I say, yeah, it takes me a while to get going, and then I don't go anywhere. So for the new listener, it's also an example of the podcast. I mean, that's a bit meta. But for a regular listener, there's a lot of options. As you become a regular listener, some listeners fall asleep during the intro. Some listeners start the intro while they're getting ready for bed or doing their brushing and their skincare or stretching or foam rolling or they're using like one of those Therabody devices, whatever it is. Some listeners start the intro before they get into bed. That's what I'm saying. And then other listeners start the podcast while they're in bed, unwinding and getting comfortable. So the intro kind of serves as a buffer between waking life and sleep so that you can wind down. And I can buff that day right out of your hair or right out of, I can help you drift away. So it just gives us some space. And so that's part of the intro is just to ease you into bedtime. Then after the intro is some like sponsors, ads. That's part of the podcast structure. Then there'll be a story. Tonight will be our a new series we're covering, GBB, Great British Bake Off. So I'll be excited to talk about that. Then there'll be some thank yous and good nights at the end. So that's the structure of the show. And what else do you need to know? You probably need to know some more stuff that I forgot. Structure of the show. Oh boy, I already got mixed up. Oh, that's the structure. Oh, why do I make the show? Well, I make the show because you deserve a good night's sleep. That's reason one. I truly believe you deserve a safe place where you can get some rest so that your life is a little bit better, more manageable, and ideally you can flourish. And so that's one thing. The other thing is because I've been there. I know how it feels tossing and turning, waking up, all that stuff. I've been there. Needing to buffer my day away. I've been buffering about my day, So that's the whole thing is, I guess what it was, I don't know if I had another point in there, but you deserve a good night's sleep. I've been there. And I think that's it. I mean, I said at the beginning of the show, I'm really grateful that I get to make this podcast because I can relate and because I think it's important. I think you getting the rest you need is important. And in a broader sense, you having the options to see what's going to work for you to fall asleep and establish a healthy bedtime routine is important, whether it's this podcast or a fan or another piece of sleep audio or, just, doing something else, some other routine. That is very important to me and I'm very grateful that I can provide this or be a stepping stone. I'm what is that? Is that ever, I probably talked about the grateful stepping stone. So many people stepped on me on their way to good sleep, and I had so much joy. And some people stuck around and danced on me, in the middle of the stream that I was in. And that really felt nice too. And that's really what it feels like to make the show. I don't know if you can get it's cool. I'm glamorized. You see, who was the first person to glamorize stepping stones? They say, well, there's a few architects and landscape design. No. I mean, in a Hollywood sense. Oh, that really glamorized, the life of a stepping stone. They kind of anthropomorphized it or whatever. Personified it. Oh, really gave that Hollywood glamour to stepping stones, but not to actual physical stepping stones. Yeah, glamorized life as a stepping stone. I don't think there was anybody that would do that. That just doesn't seem... Well, actually, there was someone. He tried. Scooter was his name. He wrote the imaginary book in his mind, The Grateful Stepping Stone. And on one podcast episode out of 8,000, he tried to glamorize stepping stones. Then he forgot about it for 12 years till he tried to write the book. And that's why I do what I do and why I'm full of gratitude, though I forget it a lot of times. You fill me up with gratitude, believe it or not, and hopefully I fill up your ears with nonsense and pointless meanders. What a deal, right? So I'm here to help. If you're new, just give the show a few tries. I hope it can help you. I'm really glad you're here. I really appreciate your time. I work very hard at Yearn and Strive, and I want to help you fall asleep. Thanks again. And here's a couple of ways we're able to bring this podcast twice a week. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Welcome to Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake. It could be thoughts, things on your mind, feeling. So things, you could be thinking about the past, present, the future, near future, other stuff. So thoughts, feelings, anything emotionally coming up for you, physical sensations. Like last night, I had all three last night. I'm not to bring this up and make it about me, but just so I can relate. I had the last one first, then I had feelings about the sensations, then I had thoughts about my thoughts about my feelings and my physical sensations. Then I had a debate about what to do. And then I did, here's some things. Who was the famous person that did the stages of, I wonder if there's stages of with sleep. It is, when you can't sleep, this is, I guess, the truth. It is a little bit full of GRIEF, if that's the correct spelling. But maybe I'll come back to that because I do a lot of bargaining, I guess, and I feel those other feelings. I don't know all of them in order. But oh boy, do I have that A word, ANGER, too. Bargaining, what is it, denial? Oh, I'll fall right, and then that part of me laughs. Let me just move my pillow. Let me just move over to the right here. I'm going to fall right asleep. And part of me goes, wah. Anyway, so whatever is keeping you awake, it could be any of that stuff. It could be, that sound effect that maybe I'll like that voice, but that was a friendly voice. Whatever's keeping you awake, I'm here to take your mind off of that while you fall asleep. And so I've got a safe place set aside. I smooth it, I pat it, I rub it down, I say safe place. It's all set aside for you here. And the way I do it is I send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents, extra words like those, word fragments, mumbles, groans, all to take your mind off stuff while you fall asleep. So if you're a regular listener, I'm so glad you're here. We haven't ever talked about these stages of sleeplessness before. Yet another book I'll never write, The Scooter Story. That would be funny. Maybe that should be the name. If I ever do write a book, that's what it should be called. Written by David Sedaris. That would be classic. I don't think I could. I don't know if the split would work for me because it'd probably be like, yeah, well, like he gets 90 Scoots. Then we get 8, and then you get 1%. And it's, well, do I have to do anything? Because maybe that could be a deal I could be into then. Like nothing. For 1%, maybe I would think about, nah, well, I don't know. Anyway, where was I? Oh, regular listeners, I'm so glad I can be here for you. And that you keep coming back and that I can help you get to sleep on a regular basis. But let me talk to the new listeners here. Hey, new listeners, welcome. This podcast is very different, so I just want to introduce you to a couple ideas to help you understand what's happening. So if you're new, the first thing to note is if you're having feelings about this podcast that are neutral or non-neutral, that's understandable. Most people, when they get here, they say, what is it? I don't know if people do a lot of squinting, but the emotional version of that, where you say, what is that over there? You see, where it's just quite out of, you say, what is that? I do that a lot when I'm walking my dog at night and she sees something that I don't see or senses something. Usually it's a CAT. Or what she thinks is one, and I can't see it. I say, what is that you're looking at there? What is it? I can't, because then I say, well, maybe we'll cross the street or something. I don't the cat's probably taking a bath or something. If it's a cat, I say, here's something. I just got a random question that came up for me is anybody see squirrels at night? I'm not kidding. How did it take me my whole life to just wonder that? You see, when was the last time you saw a squirrel at night? You see raccoons at night, but not squirrels, huh? I mean, there's probably a 99% chance tonight when I take over for a walk, I'll see 40. I'll say, oh, well, you just never noticed us, Scoots. We're here. We're enjoying the evening. And we don't, we scurry during the day so we can, relax our evenings away. But, yeah, we're around. Oh, sorry, squirrels. Okay, so I forgot. Oh, so new listeners. So this podcast is very different. That's one of the reasons you're probably having strong feelings about it. So that's why I want to tell you a couple of things. One, this podcast does not work for everybody, but in the high 90% of the people it worked for that listen on a regular basis, it took 2 or 3 tries for them to get used to it. So give it 2 or 3 tries. And if you don't like the podcast, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. It just means you don't like it. It's just a natural thing. You say, oh, no, I just don't like this show. So there's no judgment on my end if you don't like the show either. I hope you do, and I hope it can help. And I can only tell you from experience that it takes 2 or 3 tries for most people to adjust. And some of the things you have to adjust to is, one, well, creaky dulcet tones, pointless meanders, all those things. Second, this isn't a podcast you really listen to. Just not a lot of people people go bird watching, but you never hear, and I mean, just because Hollywood has never glamorized it, once again, you don't hear a lot of people going squirrel watching, though that would probably be a delightful pastime. You'd say, well, people like the birds because they sing, but if you watch squirrel watching, you know what squirrels do most of the time? They frolic. Now, they're harder to watch, but oh boy, is it worth it. So there, I just glamorized squirrel watching. Squirrel Watch, the podcast about squirrel watching and things interesting to squirrel watchers. Hey, Craig, what, that's from Script Notes. And then he'd say, hello, my name is Craig Mason. I am here in a tree watching squirrels, because he usually puts a voice on every time. Anyway, so, oh boy. How did we get to squirrel? Oh, this is kind of a bit like, I wouldn't say it's like squirrel watching, because that's something you don't really think about, right? You say, well, yeah, I watch the birds more. I notice the squirrels, but they're moving around, so I just kind of notice them in the side. I'm barely paying attention. You're barely paying attention. The squirrel story. Yep, that's how it is being a squirrel. You don't even think we're out at night. We are. But yeah, you say, well, I didn't notice, Scoots. I didn't notice it. Like, that's what a regular listener would say if we had breakfast together. It'd say, did you hear that? Did you hear the show last night? Yeah, well, I turned it on. Yeah, Scoots. Oh yeah, well, which episode was it? Because I'm working on episode. Oh, I didn't notice, Scoots. Whatever one was in my podcast played. Okay, do you know what I was talking about? I think you were talking about melame, maybe, or macrame. Maybe macaroni, or macrame, or melame, or meltorme. I don't know. Maybe it was Paul Anka. Again, no idea. Scoots, maybe it could have been Don Ho. I don't know. Okay, so I was either talking about macaroni or Don Ho. Scoots, I have no idea. I was barely listening. You did a great job once. Oh, thank you so much. Really means a lot to me. That would be how it goes, and that would be genuine. I'd say, thanks for not listening. This is the only podcast that happens. You say, yeah, you don't really need to listen to him. That would be where they'd break the wall, and they'd turn to you, and they'd say, this is really how you use the podcast. You don't really listen to him. It's great. Greatest thing, and he's not even really here having breakfast. It's just a podcast, so I don't even have to think about it. So that's the first thing that can throw new people off. The second thing is that I don't really put you to sleep. There are other sleep audios out there, and most of them are different than this show. But like this podcast doesn't put you to sleep. It keeps you company, and then while you fall asleep, I'm here to barely entertain you and take your mind off of stuff. I'm here to be your companion in the deep dark night. Your bore bruh. Your bore friend, your bore bestie, your bore bae, your bore sib, your bore cuz, your bore, the borer, you know. I'm your bore bud. I mean, that's really what I'm here to be. So you don't really listen to me and you don't really fall asleep. That's why the episodes are over an hour, or right around an hour, so you have plenty of time to drift off. But here's the other part of the bore bud role, is I'm here to the very end. So if you can't sleep, or you wake up, or you need a little, you say, I need somebody to barely just talk to me, that I can barely listen to during the day or at night. I'm here. That's what I'm here for. Like, believe it or not, I'm working this whole episode, but the work I put into it, I guess it's twofold. It's there if you need it, and it's there if you need it, but you don't need it. So those are two things to know if you're a new listener. Couple other things to know structurally, and I don't understand. I guess I keep coming back to this, and I always point it out, but then people always don't get it. But maybe because they skip this part. So the show starts off with a greeting, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends beyond the binary. I hope you know that means that you're welcome here, and that the show is built on empathy and compassion for other human beings. And, maybe not as much, I'm trying to increase my squirrel-based compassion and empathy too. But the times I've tried to pretend to be a squirrel, they've said, Scoots, this is the last time we're going to give you a warning. This is our tree. And I say, okay, sorry about that again. And I say, actually, could you call, because my squirrel outfit's actually caught on this branch too. And, I still have a mouth, it's hard for me to talk to you with my cheeks full of, I don't have it full of, have it full of nut butter. So they're kind of stuck in my cheeks. Don't do any of this. This is just imaginary, by the way. Okay, what was I saying before I climbed up in a tree? Barely listen. Oh, structurally. So that's the greeting. Then there's business. The top business is not really that long. Like, but it's like usually our sponsor Helix, then Patreon, and then, resources for listeners. And then there's our intro. So sometimes I think people think the intro in the business, I don't know, but the intro is around 20, 25 minutes of me trying to explain what the podcast is. But that's the surface what the intro seems like it is. Really what the intro is me warming it up and cooling it down at the same time so you can ease into bed or bedtime. So like if you become a regular listener, you'll notice, oh, well, I'm going to start Scoots before I get in bed. Or, I'm going to start knitting and listen to Scoots on the couch and then get in bed. Or I'm going to do some doodling in bed. Or, I'm going to, do whatever, look at my macaroni or macrame or, Macrame Today, one of the great publications. Used to be made of macrame. I don't know what that, or melame. And, and then I'm going to, make sure tomorrow morning that I wake up to that Melanie and Mel Torme podcast. Because they're talking about Don Ho. Like, they have Don Ho on. So they're making macaroni. So, okay, what was I saying? I don't know. So the whole idea of the intro is that it becomes part of your bedtime routine to ease you into bedtime and give you some distance from the day. Because I can't really, I don't have the power to just put you to sleep. I only have the power to slowly distract you while you fall asleep. Really, the only thing I can do is be here and keep you company and be your bore bud. But that's really the most important job I've ever had in my entire life. Though I've had other important jobs, like working in a library. Like this is important to you right now, if it can help you. So, structurally. So that's the intro. Because sometimes people say, what is the intro? Why do you keep going on and on and on? I say, well, give it 2 or 3 tries. I think you'll understand. And then there's business after the intro, but before our episode. And that's how podcast structure works. It's just the way they say. And that's actually the business that keeps the podcast coming out free. Then there's our episode. Tonight it's a crossover episode that you heard me talk about at the top of the show. For my friends Travis and Caitlin at Fool and Scholar Productions, Vast Horizon. So this is like a reimagining of one of their episodes. So then you'll be like, oh wow, I got to check this podcast out tomorrow during the day. But for now, it'll be here to put you to sleep, a bit like a bedtime story. Or more or less a bit like I'm taking an episode of their exciting podcast and making it into a bedtime story. So then there's thank yous at the end. So that's the structure of the show. So you can fall asleep at any time, but usually it eases listeners into bedtime, or it keeps them company, as they, whatever's going on. So structure of the show, the reason I make the show, like I said, I've been there, including last night. I said, what the hey is going on? And sometimes it just happens. Like, you do everything right, so you think, and then something comes up and you say, what, why can't I fall asleep? I had everything planned out and I did everything, I did it all. Holy, what do they call that? Holy sleep hygiene, Robin. That's what I didn't say that last night because I said, what in the strong words for adults only. But because I've been there even recently, and I know I can feel, there's a lot of feelings associated with not being able to fall asleep. And there's some primary ones. And I'm here to kind of intersect with that or interrupt that and keep you company and take your mind off of that. And then ideally you could fall asleep, or at least you could say, okay, I got a place I can breathe here. Because eventually I reach acceptance. I say, okay, but it always is, even though I've been doing this podcast for a long time and having issues with sleep my whole life, I still have to go through all those other stages most of the time. And they say, okay, well, let me just do something different for a little while, and then I'll fall asleep, or I won't, and then I'll try to figure it out tomorrow or take a nap. And inevitably, that usually helps. This podcast can hopefully interrupt that cycle just because I'm outside of you, and I'm here to work on your behalf. Really, that's what I'm here to do. And the reason why I'm here to work on your behalf is because your sleep is important. You deserve a good night's sleep, and if I can help with that, it really gives my life purpose. Now, I can't help. It doesn't, like I said, I can't help everybody. I wish I did, but I hope I can help you, because if you get a good night's sleep, you could be in a position to flourish and live your life more fully. And that's really a beautiful thing. Almost as beautiful as if I get a chance to take like a little nap later today. So that's why I'm here. That's my job. And that's what's important. Now, if you're new, yeah, like I said, give it a few tries. It might not work for you. It might not be your thing. I have creaky, dulcet tones. I'm strange. And I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But just see how it goes. There's nothing to lose. So give it 2 or 3 tries and then say, nah. Or, I mean, more and more often what happens is, like, the people that already had strong dislike are already kind of sending me stuff that's not super nice. But if you're still here, you could try other sleep podcasts. Sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. Or Empty Bowl or Sleep Whispers. Just start there and, see if there's something else out there. And then some people find their way back. Well, like, that happens more and more often because, and that's just a natural part of it. Forever, we've had that. I'll never watch that show. And then somebody says, have you seen that? And I say, no, maybe I'll check it out now. Like, people come back to this with fresh ears where they strongly listened once, had a strong reaction, then either had something come up or someone said, hey, are you sure you haven't tried that? Like, have you tried not listening to that podcast? Well, how do I do that? Well, you just turn it on and you kind of barely, the first time I was listening and it was, Scooter's too much to handle. And you say, yeah, you don't handle him. You just let him. It's kind of like you're like a sieve. He just passes through you. I mean, on a metaphorical, and not even in a metaphorical. No, thank you, Scooter. Please don't pass. No problem. I wouldn't pass through you. Pass by you. Breeze by. Okay, yeah, thanks, Scooter. Thanks anyway for that stuff. Sorry I wasn't listening to you at breakfast. No, but that was you're a figment of my imagination for the listeners. Oh, even I don't listen to you, Scoots. Yeah, it means I'm doing my job. That's what I'm proud. Believe it or not, I'm proud of that. I'm proud even the figments of my imagination don't need to listen to me. Thanks for pointing that out. So I'm glad you're here. I really hope I can help you sleep by me keeping you company and you just kind of tuning me out or barely listening. Or if you need to, you can listen. I'll be here. But I appreciate you coming by. I work really hard at Urine and I Strive. I really hope I can help you fall asleep. And here's a couple of ways. This is really how we're able to bring you this podcast for free. Thanks. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble, getting to sleep, trouble, staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether that's, thoughts on, things on your mind, thoughts about the past, present, or future, thoughts from the day, the repetitive thoughts from people repeating stuff. Any thoughts? Obviously, I'm familiar with those. It could be feelings. It could be like emotions that are coming up for you related to those thoughts that are just there. Because I guess as human beings, we emote. I know we do. Because I spent about 25 years trying to not, and I learned that doesn't work so well. So feelings, any physical sensations, that's another thing that can get in the way. And I'm here, whatever it is. It could be one of those things. It could be time, temperature, changes in routine, schedule, whatever it is. I'm here to take your mind off of whatever's keeping you awake and keep you company while you fall asleep. And what I propose to do, and it's more going to be, I'm proposing a proposal to attempt something, which that's interesting. I wonder if I can make it back to that thought, because that's the story of my life, is proposing to attempt something, and then I outthink myself. And some of you may be already not, you say, man, that's something I can relate to, barely, because I can barely follow what you're saying. But yeah, I propose to attempt things all the time. In this case, I've followed through quite a few times on this podcast. So what I'm going to propose to attempt to do, because in this case, it's two ways it has to get to you. But I'm going to I have a safe place here, rolled out, padded, puffed up, smoothed, padded, rubbed it down. I said safe place. I can hold my hand on my heart while my other hand further smooths and pats that safe place, just like you would when you say, hey, come on over. There's a nice spot for you here. Or would you prefer this spot over here? Oh, you prefer, I don't need to pat your spot. Don't worry. No, you like it cool to the touch? So I'll just, from 5 feet away, I will do a counterclockwise imaginary smoothing and patting and rubbing down of your safe place. Or no, you're right, I could just give you a map. You could just discover your safe place on your own. Sure. Whatever it is, the next step is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, which you've probably already seen a few, superfluous tangents, extra words or word fragments, segments of words and sentences. I guess what's the difference between a fragment's more something like you break off, right? You say, well, that's a fragment. It's been a fragment is something that's gone through fragmentation, where a segment, I guess, segment feels more geometrical, everything's geometrics. You're right, brain. Was that my left brain or my right brain that said that? I think it was my left brain that said I'm right. There's some irony. But yeah, segmentation, it does feel more, could I say delineated? Would that make any sense when it comes to where fragmentation feels a little bit more slightly chaotic? Not chaotic neutral. I'd say, what's your character's cool? I'd say, well, slightly chaotic. Well, that sounds more like that's an alignment. Well, it's just how my character behaves. Slightly chaotic, mostly passive. That would be my character, alignment. Mostly passive, slightly chaotic. Generally, very shy and introverted, but comes across like a little bit, like you'd probably not know they were shy. You'd say, oh boy, they got an attitude. Anyway, I think I was saying I was going to send my voice across the deep, dark night and use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones. So if you're new, a couple things to know somewhat up front is this podcast is very different. So see how it goes, or wonder, could I see how this goes? It's very different, I'm noticing right away. I'm not sure how to feel about it. And I'm not sure if I like this, or you, Scooter. And I'd say, that's no problem. I understand. You may be even feeling skeptical or doubtful. And I'd say that's a very normal reaction to this podcast. That's exactly, I would be skeptical. I'd be like, wait a second. Even though I make the show, I can still immediately, I say, wait a second, there's a dude. Wait, what does he do? He doesn't, there's like an 18-minute intro where he tries to introduce the podcast. Yep, that's one part of it. Does he like try to circle back? Well, I don't know if he tries. He's an attempt to, what did he say he does? He's attempting proposal. He writes proposals. Well, he doesn't even write them. He attempts to write proposals of of things he's going to attempt. He's making an attempt to write a proposal of something he'd like to attempt. That sounds like his autobiography. Now I know who you're okay, so that's the kind of person that makes this podcast, huh? Well, most of the time he says, one day I'll attempt to write a proposal of things I'm going to attempt. But right now I'm feeling, that's like, this is really what happens. This is like I say, oh boy, that's really stressing me out that can we just do that tomorrow? The attempting to propose what we're going to attempt. Please, that's really like it happens during most of my day. I say, please, this is like literally, this is, if you want to peek behind the curtain, you're getting it now. You say, Scoots, what's one thing that happens to you every day? You must have, do you listen to the bird songs and skip the loo? And I said, no, but you could tell I wish I did that. But, no, usually they get into an internal debate about a proposal, attempting to make a proposal to attempt things. And I usually, if it was a debate, I guess I would lose that debate. But usually it just wears me out. And I say, oh, God, I just can't do it. Just can't do it today. Because there's something I've been putting off. It's curious. If you're listening and you know what I'm talking about, you see, isn't that curious? Why can't I get that done? And now I've gotten to a place because of the podcast where I say, well, at least I can be curious and somewhat kind about it. Still exhausts me, still a little bit embarrassing and perplexing and confusing. He said, well, yeah, I can get this other stuff done. I just don't understand why I can't get that done. I can't even get a proposal attempt. And he said, well, just do. Then there's that purdy parse of you, the internal. This is, well, just get it done. Just do it. Quit wiffle waffling. And I'd say, and I think this is if there was I think this is more of a pejorative term, but feigning couch, I think, is something that used to be a thing. It looks like a Chase lounge, and they would have these in parlors. I think this was definitely invented by the, what do you call that? Patriarchy. But if there's a patriarch that used a fainting couch, it would be me. Because I guess technically am I a patriarch because I'm a father? I don't know. I'd prefer not to be in the patriarchy. I would spend a lot of time on a fainting couch, but I'd use more, it'd be more like sweating after having a rigorous debate with myself about attempting to get something done. Oh, boy. Like trying to introduce a podcast to new listeners. But, yeah, I had to get real there, new listeners, because that's just who I am. I'm a person who attempts to propose to attempt things most of my life. Even now, you'd say, really, Scooch, you're not skipping to the loo. And I'd say, my darling, sometimes I am, so sometimes you can hear my joy. I do have that, especially when I can make something, I can sneak something like that in and skip to the loo with my darlings, my Borbays. I don't know what, maybe it would, like you see, actually a lot, this is true. I haven't skipped to the loo with double O. But I might try to do that. Let's try to do that. Let's just agree, talk about whatever part of us would put me on a fainting couch, because I say, well, can't I just spend 5 minutes doing that? Oh, no, let's spend 15 minutes considering you spending 5 minutes because of all the downsides. You say, okay, you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start skipping to the bathroom, skipping to the loo and saying, my darling. And then what I'll do is I'll say, my darling, when I get to the mirror, I'll do a double thumb, squirt gun. And that should be something. If anybody's down for that, hashtag skip to the loo, double O. skipping to the loo. You could, let's probably be confusing because there's so many pods. Skipping in, whatever that thing is, one apostrophe to the loo. I might even put to the loo. I probably spell loo sometimes, Lou, and then you got to autocorrect. Let's not even attempt it. It's just too much. I got to lie down. But that could be fun. I'm going to do it today. Hopefully I'll remember. The good thing about the podcast is you'll remind me. And the cooler thing is you're far in my future. So maybe by then, you see what happened to that sleep podcast? He stopped making that. And he said, yeah, he's making the skip to the Lucast. He changed the world. Remember how 2020 was going? Do I ever? Yeah, well, in September of 2020, late September, he was skipping to the bathroom, and it caught fire. Once everybody started skipping to the bathroom, there were some twisted ankles and things, and you say we got to even be more careful about those toys, Junior. Now that I'm he unfortunately he bankrupted all of the last great feigning, the great feigning couch barons. They were really, everyone thought it was other things, but it was really the barons that ran feigning couches. That was what 2020 was all about. Once they were undone, everybody was skipping to the bathroom or the loo or something to the, whatever fun thing you can do that rhymes with WC or banyo. Or, you know what I mean? So, oh boy, I'm supposed to be telling new listeners about the pie. Oh, I have a tendency to go off topic. That's one thing you should know if you're new. And so this is a podcast you don't really listen to. That rhymed with new and Lou rhyme. I just had to point that out, even though it was it's obvious. Some part of me is like, that's obvious. Oh, yeah, you're right, it is. When things rhyme, it's obvious, huh? What about when they almost rhyme? That's when I that's when I even feel stronger to point it out. Skipping to the loo with you, that would not be, you'd say, no, I'm just going to skip to the loo, not with any, just with me, my internal me, my darling, my internal darling. Okay, I got to get back to the intro. So if you're new, you're getting a really good dose of when I go off topic, but it's kind of silly. It's a little bit goofy, very strange. You're right, very strange. A grown man skipping to the bathroom can change. Who would have thought they could change the world? Not many people did. And changed his world, though. You should have seen him. He went from a total grouch to just partially grouchy. Okay, so Sleep With Me. That's the podcast I'm in the middle of trying to do an intro for. So the show starts off with a greeting. This is other things that throw new listeners off. I do a greeting. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends beyond the binary, swamp-based beings in this case, because this is Outer Things. Then there's business. Business is a few minutes. Then there's an intro that's around 20 minutes of me. What we're just doing now. We're just talking. I kind of try to introduce the podcast and get you ready. And for regular listeners, ease you into bedtime. For a new listener, you say, wait a second, when's the story start? When are you going to get on with it? And I'd say eventually I'll get there. But the intro really just, as you start to become a listener, you say, oh, I start getting ready for bed, or I get in bed, I get comfortable. Then I remember I got to skip off to the loo. Then I get back in bed. Then I'm even more relaxed. And then and the podcast was playing the whole time. And it's really something familiar because the intro kind of follows the same structure every time, but it's different every time. We've never talked about this before that I remember, which probably means I talked about it 5 times in the last 7 years. But so, man, I'm in a good mood. This, I really think I'm onto something. You think this could get me, is there any prizes that aren't like a Nobel or Pulitzer Prize that aren't goofs either? You say, yeah, we got you. If Joy Germ Joan was still around, I bet you she'd give me a prize if I followed through on it. The problem would be I could skip to the loo myself, but the idea of the Skip to the Loo Foundation or something, that's too tiring. Sorry. I better just do this intro. So that's the intro. And for new listeners, it's understandable. It can be, you could have strong objections to the intro. Some people, and I don't exactly know why, but they feel like it's one big advertisement or something. It's like, no, there's ads at the beginning of the intro and after the end of the intro. But in between is like 18 to 20 minutes of content that I more or less put some work into to ease you into bedtime. So then after the intro is business, that's how the podcast structure works. Then there's a story. Tonight will be our episodically modular series that you can listen to in any order at all, Odder Things. And it's totally like relaxing and very sleepy. And then there's the thank yous at the end. So that's the structure of the show. And the other things you really need to know, which we kind of covered, you don't really need to listen to me. You just kind of barely listen. And eventually you'll adjust. And like it takes 2 or 3 times to get used to this podcast. That's what most listeners say. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have told me. Took 2 or 3 tries. First, you kind of got on my nerves. And I accept that. Like some people, like a lot of, like you'd say, what do you mean I got on your, I'd say, are you kidding me? Of course I got on your nerves. I'm a bit different. I have creaky, dulcet tones, and I overuse things like skip into the loo. I don't know if you could say skip to the loo. You could try it without and be in a bad mood. I mean, somebody will say. I mean, I can say it enough times to put some people in a bad mood. But again, maybe then it's like, oh, this just wasn't the podcast for me. I prefer march to the loo. And I say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's probably you're probably like, yeah, you might be looking for something different then. Though if you marched like a robot, then you'd say, well, no, I think you're asleep with me, listener. I could see that. March into the, robot. That's where robot goes. Marching robot goes to the bathroom. The roo. And then they say, roo, sweet pickles. Okay, so structure of the show. Don't need to listen. No pressure to fall asleep either. I'm going to be here for about an hour. This podcast doesn't even really put you to sleep. It keeps you company while you drift off. Or if you can't sleep or if you wake up and you need some company, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to be here making the show to the very end. So there's the story, there's the thank yous. That's the structure of the show. The reason I make the show, I think this soliloquy or whatever we went on points it out. I do a lot of overthinking. There's parts of me that are very not easy to deal with. And, I spend my whole life dealing with them at bedtime and during the day. And I don't know, they're there. And they're just parts of me. And I say, well, I'm just trying to get some sleep now. And what I learned is if I can get something outside of me to take my mind off of it, makes it easier for me to fall asleep. But I do know that when you can't sleep, whether it's one of those reasons or just something baffling, it can be really frustrating. And that's why I want to help. But that's one reason. The other reason is because you deserve a good night's sleep. You deserve a place where you can get some rest. And if you do, the likelihood, people who get a good night's rest are like 98% more likely to consider skipping to the loo when it's proposed to them on a sleep podcast. That's a future fact, maybe. So that's why I make the show. I want you to get some rest and have a nice place and be able to, like, that your life's a little bit brighter and that bedtime has a little bit less dread. That's why I make the show. Because you are important. And if I can help you, it really would be it would make me want to skip to the loo. I mean, like, what else would it? Like, I know how it feels. I know how it feels, lonely, frustrating, and all that other stuff. So I want to help if I can. Unfortunately, like I said, this podcast doesn't work for everybody, but I really, really hope it works for you. Give it a few tries. Not for me, but for you, just to see how it goes. because I really appreciate you coming by. I really work hard. I yearn and I strive, and I just want to help you fall asleep. Thank you again. And here's a couple of ways I'm able to bring you this show for free twice a week. Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play. I'm going to do the rest. What I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether it's thoughts you're thinking about, so thoughts, things on your mind, feelings, so anything coming up for you emotionally, feelings, physical sensations, changes in time. So anything you're thinking about, anything you're experiencing emotionally or feeling physically, or any of those, so those are some things that keep me up at night. But it could be other stuff. I'm only laughing because I said, wait a second, all those things at different times. But I won't get into it, but, or it could be, changes in time, temperature, outside noise, partner noise, pet anything. West End boys, East End girls and West End boys. I mean, I do hear from people that live in above stuff, and you say, it's so noisy down there. Or you say, is that an 80s song reference, Scoots? And I say, hey, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think so. I think it was in maybe the 90s. I don't know. Pet Shop Boys, right? Is that not who's saying that? I don't think it is, because it wouldn't make sense. I think it was that London Beat. I'm not sure. And I know I'll think of it later and be embarrassed. But so where was I? So whatever's keeping you awake, whatever it is, I'm going to try to take your mind off of stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my voice across the deep, dark night. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, superfluous tangents. I'm going to go off topic and extra words, believe me. But really what I'm going to do, what did I, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders. Oh, yeah, extra words, confusion, profusion of confusion. I haven't trademarked that, but because there's not really many other uses for it. I don't know. We could use it. You could use it in your own life, because you say, how am I feeling when you're doing a check-in? I don't know if a lot of people do that, but I've been trying to set more time aside for that, a little few-minute check-in. I say, well, what am I feeling? Can I label some of these feelings? Or, well, I'm feeling a profusion of confusion. Could that be, does anybody listen that makes dating apps? Is there a dating app where you say what your mood is, or maybe just in general? Is that you say, well, what's my mood? A profusion of confusion. Or you could say, because people use it when you're sweating, right? They say, I'm sweating profusely. I'm profusely confused. I have confusion pouring out my pores. And that's just a matter of fact. And so if you feel that way, if you're profusely confused, you're in the right place. And that may be meta. If you're new, you could be confused, and you could be having a profusion of confusion. You could be confounded too. Confounded by Scoots can sometimes result in a confounction too. Also, I overuse words. So if you're new, let me check in with you here, because just in case that confountion's happening, that's when you're so confounded by me, you frown. And as here's the thing, totally normal reaction to this podcast, not out of the ordinary at all. A lot of people have that reaction. In fact, in the high 90 percentile, the first time you listen to this podcast is very different, and hopefully it stays very different in a good way. So all my people that are listening, that have been listening for 300, 600, 900 episodes, thanks for being there for me, and I'm glad I can be there for you. So whether you've been listening, this is your first listen or your 1,000th, it can be it can be confounding. But especially the first few, the best advice I can give you is, I just read a review that said, just kick back and let the magic happen. And I would just say, but it will be like a magician setting up tricks. One time I went to see a team of magicians, two magicians, And it was in LA when I volunteered at the Anthony Quinn Library for the summer program. And the librarian had hired 2 magicians. Now, this was when I was a youngster. I was like 22, 23. And the 2 magicians arrived, and they were somewhere between 16 and 24. I really don't know. And they were I thought they were great, but they also the kids kept catching their tricks, a little bit. But I also thought I had to watch them set up and stuff because I was a volunteer. So I guess my point is that this podcast is like, if you let the magic happen, it's like letting the magician, if you get to a magic show early and you're watching the magician set up their tricks, but you're not trying to figure the tricks out. You're just like, stuffing what are you stuffing what is that called? A string? No, it's a rope into a bottle. Pleasant watching you do that. I'm not even going to ponder what the trick is for, or if you're if it's an illusion or magic. I'm just watching a magician set up. And not everybody has a brain to do that. I do, unfortunately. I mean, sometimes, I guess because I'm always surprised. I could watch a magic trick. I'm just one of those people. I watched all those specials. I talk about this on the intro all the time, and then I see it again. I say, I can watch one of those behind the magic person or whatever. I mean, I have to, as long as it's 5 years apart, I say, wait, how are they going to do that again? And I say, I have no idea. And then a lot of times I watch it and I still say, how did they, what in the, for a little while, I thought David Blaine was magic. I mean, even when I was watching this, even though I knew it wasn't, I said, this is like magic. But this would be the other side of it. You're still like, this isn't magical watching you set up, but I'm not really paying attention. I'm barely paying attention to you setting up your tricks. So if you could consume the podcast, I know that's confusing and maybe confounding and perplexing, but if you could consume the podcast in that way, kind of a kicked back, uninterested way, that was like one piece of advice I got recently from a listener. And give the show a few tries. So just kind of barely pay attention to the podcast. So this is a podcast you barely listen to. It's also a sleep podcast that's not really here to put you to sleep. I'm here to keep you company as you drift off. The shows are about an hour, so you have plenty of time. Or if you can't sleep, I'm here to keep you company to the very end. So whether you're awake or asleep, I'm here for you. So those are a couple things. What else do I need you to know? So podcasts you don't listen to, podcasts you hear to keep you company as you drift off. Oh, structurally what to expect. This can throw new listeners off, and I guess understandably. So show starts off with a greeting. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends beyond the binary, and my beautiful bakers, because tonight we're doing Great British Bake Off or Great British Baking Show. So that's the greeting, so you feel welcome. This is a welcoming place. Then there's the business about 6 minutes or something. Maybe sometimes I ramble more. That's how we're able to bring the podcast twice a week to you. Then there's an intro where I ramble for about 12 to 20 minutes. And some new listeners can have, they don't know where the business ends and the intro begins. The intro is like where I introduce the show, explain how it works. I barely ever get to a point because I go off topic so much. So you kind of get an idea of what to expect. For the first 20 minutes, I'm here keeping you company and explaining you what the podcast is. I mean, just to go back to that magician, if they were saying, yeah, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm stuffing a rope in a bottle. And later what I'll do is, I'll be tying some knots on this here rope. And you may notice, that the bottle, this is the old bottle climbs the rope trick. Not a trick, though. It's not an illusion. It's the bottle climbs the rope. And also, I like to add some comedy in. So I'll also have a misdirect where, I have a double misdirect where I the trick fails twice. And then on the third time, the one time the bottle doesn't, the bottle deflates. Then another time the rope barks at me like a dog. And so at that point, you may tune out. I mean, unless you're really into magic and understanding magic, I more appreciate I appreciate it. I I don't have the dexterity to be doing magic. I mean, except for the magic of keeping you company and taking your mind off stuff, but that's a whole different illusion. I do it with the gummies in my brain. So, what was the intro's a bit like that. And so for a new listener, it can really throw you off. But for a regular listener, it's something high 90 percentile of listeners enjoy listening to. And there's nothing wrong with not liking the intros. In fact, you could skip them. Regular listeners either start the show at 20 minutes or they subscribe on Patreon where they get story-only episodes. But for like most listeners, the intro is part of their wind down routine or their bedtime routine. So they'll start playing it before they get in bed or as they're getting in bed, as they get comfortable, as they're doing some sort of other like wind down, or some people are falling asleep right now. Good night. You look so cute there. Yeah, poofity poofity poo. I just went my magic wand and, oh, there's where the bottle is. That bottle popped out of my magic wand. That would be a magic trick. And then they catch it, and it's like a real glass bottle. Some magician listening, you could do that. I mean, you could figure out the magic part of it. But I would clap for that. I would be like, oh my goodness, that's a real bottle. There's no way it could fit in a magic wand. And because it's glass, I would assume that there's no sort of trickery because you can't really. So I say, how did that person do that? I thought it was going to be flowers. Oh, sorry, I'm in the middle of a podcast intro. So just see, as you start to become a regular listener, you can kind of adjust and see how you like to listen to the intro. But just realize the intro's here to give you some distance away from the day and to start to drift away. Because for me, I know I can't fall asleep right away. It just never has worked for me. So anything that involves someone else telling me or some sort of step-by-step process where at the end of it I'm supposed to be asleep doesn't work. It's more like slowly turning down the volume. So that's really what the intro is here for. It's long and dragged out because I want to like get away. You know, it's I don't know. I think that makes sense. Then there'll be some business between the intro and the episode, and then we will talk about the second half of the first episode of the ninth. I don't know. We'll talk about part of an episode of the Great British Baking Show or Great British Bake Off. And, oh, boy, will it be a treat. I think, it'll be rolling like a wagon wheel. So that's just, and then the show ends with thank yous. So that's the structure of the show. I think the only other things you need to know is that, let's see. Give the podcast a few tries. The reason I make the show, because I've been there. I know how it feels tossing and turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep. So I just want to help if I can. And then also, you deserve a good night's sleep. It's just a fact. And I would like to live in a world where you're rested and you're flourishing. And if I could take part in that and help, it's great. But if you're doing it, that's even better. Like you getting to live the life your life more fully. Holy cow. That's really an honor to assist in that in any way I can. So that's it. That's the structure of the show. I think that's everything you need to know, other than give it a few tries, see how it goes. You got nothing to lose, really. I mean, except for frowns. That's a common experience. So I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate you checking the show out. All you regular listeners, I love you. I mean, thank you so much for coming back time after time and supporting this podcast and your appreciation. I couldn't do it without all of you. I work hard, I yearn and I strive, and I really want to help you fall asleep. And here's a couple of ways I'm able to do this for you twice a week. Hey, this is Scoots tucking you in. Usually I do these like a month in review. But I don't know if the messaging of we're recording this pretty close to the last one, just because I got a lot travel family stuff going on. But I just want to use this time. We're making some small changes to the show, maybe to the thank yous. We had to change the Sleepy Supporter Zone. So I just want to thank you for listening. And if you're listening right now, either you're really listening, right? Because you're an essential. I just want to thank you for listening because this show's really about staying connected in the deep, dark night, right? And I just did an interview with somebody, and I was telling them that, yeah, there's people still listening at the end of the shows, and I'm there to the very end. That's why the shows are over an hour. That's why I'm so dedicated. Everybody who works on the show's dedicated. So I'm just wanted to use this time, like usually I use it to kind of promote Sleep With Me Plus or the sponsors. There may be a sponsor. Oh, no, wait, this would replace the sponsor, right? But to just thank you for listening and to know I'm here and working really hard to stay here for you in the deep, dark night. If you are up and you say, well, this really shows me how essential it is for you to be here for me on a regular basis, like if Sleep With Me is essential to you and you're in a position to support the show financially, not just to support the show because you get pretty sweet bonus content, but really you're saying, hey, yeah, this show is so essential to me. Sign up at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. And if Sleep With Me is essential to you and you say, I can't afford $7 a month, Scoots, it's too much. I totally get that. Like you can join our referral program for free, refer people to the free podcast and get ad-free and story-only episodes 3 months at a time, for every 3 referrals. And we just gave those to people. So that's sleepwithmepodcast.com/ sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer, REFER, sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, or support our sponsors. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope, the good thing is you could queue up another episode too, right? But reach out, let me know, use the contact form on our website. Let me know what's essential to you with the podcast. Thanks.